Hi everyone, Pat here. Welcome to this week's Tuesday market review. Lots to talk about today. Weekly open, monthly open, new VWAP bands, a lot to discuss with the S&P making and closing new highs, and obviously Bitcoin also closing the best monthly close it ever has done. So really impressive overall June, or pretty impressive Q2 after a very poor Q1, right? So this monthly close is very important. I really like the fact that we didn't following the SFP we put in on Bitcoin back in May. I'm really happy that following June we managed to continue to hold above that 102,400 area. I think that was a really positive close for BTC on the monthly, and it shows that the strength is there, right? Despite all of the war FUD that we had, bottoming on bad news is one of the best signs you can get from the market. So overall, really happy with the monthly close on BTC. Equally, the weekly is looking fantastic as well. Really positive signs around this 102,400 area, right? That's sort of like monthly level, and then also above the 104,400 area. We continue to hold this monthly region and this monthly and weekly range high, and continue to flag into this area, which is really positive. This flagging, I discussed this on last week's market review, but this flagging really reminds me of the similar price action we had last summer, where we were flagging above the 2021 highs on the monthly. We continue to hold this area as support before breaking out and rallying, and I can almost see us doing a similar thing here over summer, right? Sort of flagging into this area, into this January and December highs, and as long as we continue to hold this 102k support on the weekly and above this 102k support on the monthly, I'm fairly sure we can look at breaking out further towards the end of the year. But today's video is going to be covering sort of my thoughts into June, and also my thoughts for this week. I'm planning on doing more of a higher time frame outlook. It's been a while since I've done a full video on my outlook and why I'm expecting us to continue to rally into Q4, even into Q1 2026, and why I'm predicting 140 to 200k Bitcoin by next year. I think this is easily possible, so keep an eye out on my channel for that video that will probably come out later this week or earlier next week. So as we move into Q3 now, obviously we've got some new bands. We've got prior monthly bands formed, and we also have the Q2 bands. We ended up closing outside the Q2 value area high, which was positive, but we actually closed under the May value area high, and we also closed it under that, developing June value area high, which is now the prior monthly value area high. June was obviously quite a choppy month, and I think this prime monthly value area high and this May value area high is going to be very important. If we can get a breakout in July above 108 to 110k, I'm fairly sure that we can leg up in July, and we can break out in summer. So more on that later, because we have some other things to discuss with the dollar and summer rallies, etc. But overall, this area is stacked. We can see below we have the prior monthly value area high, the June value area high, the May VWAP, and the prior monthly value area low, all from 105 down to 102. I think this is a really important place to hold. I think as long as we drop and hold into this area, we can look for continuation back towards sort of 110, and then it gets back to serious decisions. And if we are going to break out, do we do something like this, or do we reject and we break down? So more on this area shortly. But for now, good values here on BTC on the monthly to continue to hold into. The quarterly values we held really nicely into the Q1 value area high and the 2024 Q4 value area high. Again, these sort of align with that weekly and monthly area, so a really important place to hold. And 102 to 100k remains that very important place to hold. 100k also because it's a big whole number, right? 100k is like a psychological number for the market. A lot of people will look at this as a very serious pivot for Bitcoin. Overall, not bad weekly and monthly close at all. We're just continuing to chop and range for now. So taking a look at the level of interest that I just discussed, is 105k region. We have a daily breaker here, which for me is the place to look for some fresh long positions, at least swing long positions. I think trying to buy towards this daily breaker, what was once a supply, as it formed a new lower low, is now flipped for a breaker demand, because we had an impulsive move back through it. We also have support here from the high volume node point of control. We can see here this high volume node point of control is very important. A lot of the time we want to see a good reaction from it, and we can see some continuation. Brings me sort of to my plan here for the week in July, and whether we are going to see a move higher in July. And I think it's really important because obviously we're flagging right now, whether you believe in meme lines or not, they do work. And I'm pretty confident the fact that if we are going to break out in July, we really need to hold into this 105 to 104k region. The momentum to sustain, I think there's opportunity here for a bounce and continuation and locking in a higher low, right? So we've been forming lower lows. If we can lock in a higher low, hold into this high volume node POC area in that higher low, like I just said, and there's a good chance that if we get above 108 to 110, we can break out in July. My opposing case to that is if obviously we don't bounce from here. If we don't bounce from 104, 800, 105k, we start to break down below, I'm fairly sure what we see is a bleed out into July towards this lower high volume node area, right? These sort of areas act as a nice magnet, especially the point of controls. What we do is if we don't hold into here, we sort of bleed out into 97k into July, August, bottoming into August, and then eventually getting that breakout going into late Q3 into Q4. So overall, really key pivot for Bitcoin and the whole market in general. I think for swing longs, you want to try and target this 104, 800, 105k region to hold, and an invalidation under there. Since if we do fail to hold here, I think you pack it up for summer and you look at scaling into spot altcoins, right, towards the back end of summer, and buying spot alts towards the back end of summer, back towards 97k into July and August for a bottom. I think that's the plan. That's as long as 104, 800 doesn't hold. So this is the sort of position I'm looking at, buying into 104, 700, invalidation under 102, 400, but I'll probably just cut it if we don't see a really nice reaction from this high volume node POC. Looking at targeting 110, and obviously if we can flip 110, then we look at targeting much higher in summer. Something else I want to quickly discuss is the monthly opens. A lot of the time we do see these monthly open sell-offs, right? We sort of get this drop into monthly open and pump, drop into monthly open, pump, drop into monthly open, we pump, drop into the monthly open, pump, drop into the monthly open, pump, and so on and so forth. It's very consistent, and historically Bitcoin from the low to the high pumps at least 10% within the first week of trading from the monthly open. So if we can lock in a move down towards 104, 800, right, and we lock in a low down towards 104, 800, I'm fairly sure there's a good chance of a 10% move there, which sort of puts us in towards that, a high 113k. So obviously this time we are moving into summer months, and the potential for a breakout becomes a lot smaller. But it's something to consider here, the fact that following the monthly open sell-off, we always pump 10% on average from that monthly open low. So keep an eye out for that scenario. Bottoming into 104k, we could see a 10% move off the back of that. Now to discuss a little bit of the chance of rallying into July. Two occasions where the dollar lost $99 back in June 2020 and also back in May and April 2017. In both occasions, you can see how Bitcoin traded following that breakdown, which we're already starting to see. Once we lost that 99 level back in March, we can see how Bitcoin started trading really well, almost 20% or bounced 20% from the low, right? 50% from the low, sorry, to make a new all-time high. And I'm fairly sure as long as the dollar continues to be weak throughout summer, there's chance for this to happen, right? We can see that during summer last year, we continue to rally, and we bounced late Q3 and continue to rally again here. Rallied, bounced late Q3 into July, and continue to rally through summer into Q4. Now I think there's a potential for this same scenario to play out as long as the dollar remains weak. And this is sort of a scenario that I think where alts can really outperform in the market, where we see this last leg up from Bitcoin in the market. This is where alts start to really perform, and I will discuss that now and elaborate on my thoughts a little bit more. So one of the scenarios was, yes, buying towards July and August. I think that would be the best opportunity to buy alts back towards the back end of July and August. That's if we don't hold 104K, right? I'm not going to go over that scenario again, just go back and you can see that scenario. But in the off chance that we do bounce from 104, 800, 105K, and we bounce to new highs and Bitcoin sees a breakout, I think we can really see altcoins turn up the speed and start to break out, right? And I've discussed, again, this many times before, but very small windows where altcoins perform, right? We get these small windows that when Bitcoin truly breaks out from this range, this is when we can see the total 3 really start to outperform, right? During these ranges, total 3, we see a bleed, right? Total market cap, excluding BTC and ETH. We can see this scenario where, you know, altcoins bleed through these ranges, but through these BTC ranges. And as soon as Bitcoin breaks out, up only, up only, up only, right? So if we do get that breakout and we do get that scenario where the dollar continues to break down, Bitcoin goes on this final leg, let's look at total 3 compared to this scenario, right? June 2020 to February 2021, right? Let's see what the total 3 done. If we go on the total 3 chart, June 2020, right? February 2021, right? This is when total 3 really started to pick up. Even though it had been flat, right? Up until June 2020, and then the dollar broke down and risk assets went crazy, right? That's when the real alt season started to happen, yeah? And then again here, if we look at the dollar from back in April 2017 through to January 2018, right? This time around, we don't have that much history, but 2017 through to January 2018, right? That was when the altcoins actually started to trade really well. So you have to consider a scenario that if we did get a good breakout from Bitcoin again, is this the start of what could be a really nice trading period for altcoins? And I'm not opposed to that scenario, right? And obviously we need the stars to align a bit, but with the dollar breaking down, with the M2 10-week lead continuing to leg up, right? Bitcoin has been paired to this for 3 years now, tick for tick. As long as we continue to trade on par with the M2 over the next few weeks, right? I think we continue to leg up and we can break out in the market. And a lot of people were not expecting a summer breakout, me included, but now we're starting to see some really positive signs. I'm starting to opt to the scenario where it could be possible. But back to what I was saying, this is important, right? For a momentum-based move going into summer, I think it's important we continue to hold 104. Otherwise, we do get that second scenario I discussed where we bleed out into 97 and we look at buying spot towards here. So this is kind of my plan right now. We bounce into 105, look at fresh swing longs and ape alts on a breakout. If that does not happen, then we look at aping alts back towards 97k, 98k, July and August. Only altcoin I'm looking at right now for a long is Pengu. I think this setup looks quite nice, especially if Bitcoin can find an intraday bottom around this 106k level before bouncing and going lower. We're seeing a lot of shorts piling in down here. I wouldn't be surprised to see a bit of a squeeze up today before rolling over again. Pengu could be good for a bit of a rally today, as long as it can hold this 0.014 level. I think alts remain a good way of just extracting what you can from the market. I wouldn't try and hold positions for too long. Take your gains daily and run with your profits. That's it for this week's Tuesday market review. Got a lot covered today and kept it under 15 minutes, which is a new record, I think. Always run over with these, trying to aim for 10 minutes. Make sure you check out these socials in the link below, links to the Discord, and drop a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode. I will see you guys on Thursday for charting from blank, if not for the higher time frame market reports video, so look out for that one. See you guys.